Welcome to the sixth round. I'm your host, Navid Razi from our MMA Weighin studios in downtown Dallas, joined by award-winning journalist for MMA Junkie and USA Today, my partner in crime, John Money Morgan, live from Las Vegas, Nevada. And John, some interesting news came out the other day regarding what many consider as the greatest fighter of all time in Anderson Silva. Anderson failed to show up for a round of scheduled media events in Los Angeles to promote his UFC 162 bout with contender Chris Weidman. And it's kind of bizarre, John. I mean, this is a guy who, he's had a part in helping build the UFC and making it where it is today. He's been in some of the most memorable fights in UFC history. This is a guy who a lot of people feel is a pound-for-pound king and the only guy really that anybody can put above John Jones. And a lot of people are speculating that he missed this media day on purpose. The UFC obviously fined him $50,000 for skipping this media day, and I want to have your take on it, John. But to me, I really don't buy that. I mean, this is a guy who beat Damian Maia in Abu Dhabi. Dana White came out and said that he was going to cut Anderson Silva if he ever performed like that again. And this is right after this guy won this fight. Anderson Silva sat there, faced the media the entire time, to the point where Chuck Liddell had to even step in and kind of defend him and say, hey, what else do you want this guy to do? I mean, he went in there and fought, and he won the fight. Give him a break. So I guess my question to you is, are you buying the fact that he skipped this thing on purpose? Because he's come out and said that he didn't know about the media day, and he was already scheduled a flight to Brazil, and there was no way he would have been able to come back and make it. Or do you think that he genuinely missed this thing?
I tell you, you hit the nail on the head when you said it's bizarre. I really don't know what to make of it. In some regards, we haven't seen anything like it before. For Dana White to come out and openly say, hey, we fined the guy $50,000. Release the actual amount. How many times did we try to ask him how much he fined Matt Mitrione, and he wouldn't say a word? It was just significant. So I tend to think there's something to this. If Anderson actually didn't know that he was supposed to be here at this the set of media appearances, I've got to believe the PR team, whoever was in charge of setting this up, would be out right now. That person would be gassed. How do you not tell the guy that I think is the greatest fighter in the history of the sport? How do you not make sure he knows that he has television and radio appearances to do, ESPN and Los Angeles Times and all these things? So I think he did do it. Now, why he did it, I think he did it on purpose. Why he did it, I still don't understand exactly. Dana has said before that Anderson Silva is an artist, and he works in different ways. And he's also said that Anderson Silva doesn't really like the media that much, doesn't enjoy talking to us, doesn't enjoy doing the interviews. And I've got to imagine by now, man, he gets absolutely just hounded with interview requests. So I can understand that to a point. But the only other thing I could think is maybe he's trying to play a little bit of a mind game with Chris Weidman. Chris Weidman did end up doing his media day. Actually, he was in Las Vegas the other day, and I actually sat down and spoke with him for quite a bit of time. And, he said, with a little bit of sarcasm, but he did say he's not 100% convinced that Anderson Silva is going to show up in July and take this fight. He said, watch, there's going to be an injury. All of a sudden he's not going to be able to fight anymore. And so I think that's interesting. Maybe Anderson Silva's gotten his head a little bit. So just a bizarre situation all the way around. You said it. But if he did know, and if he did decide to skip out, then I got to say I kind of applaud the UFC for trying to put their foot down. Granted, $50,000 to Anderson Silva may be like $50 to me and you, but hey, I'm still gonna sweat $50 if I'm missing it. It may not screw up my monthly budget, but I'm not gonna be happy that I'm missing it. So I kind of applaud the UFC for doing something about it.
So let me get this straight: are you trying to tell me that you think Nick Diaz, who missed all those media events, you're saying he knew about those?
I'm gonna go out
intentionally.
On a limb. I do think I'm not sure of this, but seeing the UFC's operations firsthand, I think they use emails, phone calls, text messages, that sort of thing to let people know ahead of time. I don't think they generally just spring 8 hours of media interviews on somebody in a day.
It is interesting, John, because Anderson Silva, up to this point, even though it's very evident that he isn't a big fan of the media, he really hasn't pulled something like this. Obviously, there was the fight with Damian Maia where things were kind of weird in the cage, but outside of the cage, it seems like he's been a pretty big professional. Dana White even mentioned that this guy is an artist. However, when it comes down to it, he gets stuff done. He irons out contracts, and he goes in there, and he fights who they put in front of him. So it remains to be seen what happens with this thing. $50,000 is a pretty big dent in my book, and I'm sure in your book as well, and hell, even Anderson Silva's, regardless of how much money he's making. But hopefully this event does go down, and UFC 162 with Chris Weidman does indeed happen when it should happen. That's going to do it for the 6th round. For Navid, Razi in downtown Dallas, John Morgan in Las Vegas, Nevada. We'll catch you next week.